Welcome to the DevReady Podcast, where we're helping non-techs build better tech. Today we're joined by Yupin Robson. She is the co-founder of Edify Med. Um, Edify is all about sharing knowledge from uh, people in medical industries to maybe the underprivileged sort of markets that can't get access to good information and good sound information and studies today, and then also about changing the language around that. So, giving translations to enable people to learn at a faster rate. Yupin, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Andrew.
When we spoke, it was pre-Christmas, I believe. I think one of the things that stood out was the inequality that you sort of mentioned across the globe in terms of medical information and what you stood for as a business. Found that quite fascinating. But let's dig in a little bit about you. So, Yupin, tell us a bit about your background and what's brought you to today and how you sort of moved into Edify Med.
Okay, yeah. So I was born in Thailand. So our family immigrated to Australia when I was 9 years old. I didn't speak any English when we came, and I sat at home for 6 months learning English from play school.
Nice.
I'm still fluent in my Thai, which I'm really grateful for that I didn't lose that, which many people do when they come at that age. Um, So that's kind of my family heritage. I did all my studies here. I mean, you can hear me, I'm pretty Aussie.
Pretty easy, yes, definitely.
Shocked sometimes when they see my face, like, oh, we weren't quite expecting from that. I studied science. I really loved medicine. Was going to go into med, but life had different plans, and I went to kind of the dark side of medicine, which is industry. And spent over 23 years working in the pharmaceutical and medical device world, in sales, marketing, training, commercialization, all of those things. Um, just pre COVID, stepped off that kind of big train that just takes you on this really long journey and started, thinking, what's life outside of the corporate juggernaut. And that was actually where kind of the idea of Edify Medical really came from. I rang a really great girlfriend, Bianca, who is the other co-founder for Edify Medical. And I said, hey, want to do something? And she's like, oh, okay. Well, yeah.
When you came out of corporate world, was it something you sort of had the idea fleshing away within your mind, or is it you decided to take a break during COVID and then come up with the concept? Because a lot of people were thrown in the deep end and sort of thought, maybe I should do something on my own. Where did you stand within that?
Yeah, so actually I came out because
Mm.
I was supposed to move to Singapore for work,
Okay.
and we actually came to an impasse where I couldn't do that
Mm.
because I was had spent about 4 years running Asia Pac from the Gold Coast, which is amazing. But they really wanted me to be in Singapore, and so we decided to part way
Mhm.
at that point. And I finished up with a redundancy package in January. As you'd know, COVID started creeping around in March, was when we all started to really hear about it. So it wasn't really, it kind of caused the pause. I knew that when I finished the corporate journey, I wasn't in a great rush to go back in. I really felt like I wanted to do something that was of value and not just be working for money. Um, and so, kind of, the COVID situation gave the space to think about what it was that I wanted to do. I had a few offers to go back and do some stuff for smaller industry, startups actually in Brisbane, some health startup, but decided not to kind of pursue that and started my own consulting business first just to earn a little bit of money, which is OBSID consulting. Um, and as fun as I found the consulting business was, being a saleswoman, I really wanted my own product to sell. So that was kind of like, what can I have that I can make and I can sell myself?
Got it. If you've got
Was
that
really,
experience, it's yeah, you understand that product can obviously help you leverage out and do things a little bit differently. Consulting is by the hour consulting rates, which with your experience would be reasonably high, I would imagine. But it is a taxing sort of a role because it's all about you showing up, being the best that you can be, and adding good value. So it is a very different world to selling product for sure.
I've actually found I've continued to consult today, even through the whole process. And interestingly, I have to say, I've actually found the experience of consulting to other businesses is kind of like getting free consulting work to Edify.
Classic.
Someone else
Yeah.
or use our business.
I like it. Yeah, you're always learning, right? And we don't know everything. That's a reality too. So what? And I sit in here on a podcast talking to you, and I'm here to learn something from you. And I treat it a little bit selfishly as well because I definitely will learn something through today, and we'll share it out, and hopefully someone else can learn from it and learn something from you as well. So yes, I feel what you say there when you're working with other businesses. I get it. Yeah.
No, it's really fun. I think that was, and I feel privileged to have had the opportunity to make the changes in life that, sometimes many of us feel like we want to make but can't do it for whatever restrictions. So I feel really privileged that I was able to have the opportunity to make some major changes, and be supported by friends and families in the process of the change. So having joy in what you do has always been really important part of my work. And when you stop having kind of fun and joy, then you're just working for money, aren't you? So.
Yeah, and that's when if the fun goes out of it, we generally can sort of get sort of monotonous in terms of our day to day and get a bit of yeah, waiting for the weekend. And if that becomes what your reality is, it can be a little bit of a challenge, definitely. In terms of moving, I'll ask the question, moving from corporate to startup, what are some of the learnings that you've seen? Because being in corporate for 23 years and moving to startup is very, very different worlds. So what's some of the learnings that you've had during the transition?
I think the biggest learning is really, at the end of the day, everything stops with you, whether it be the finances, the development of everything, the tools to do what you need to do to either make a product or sell a product. I had a lot of resources at my fingertip with big budgets and was quite a, big spender.
Yes.
So actually learning to value the money of how much and how hard that is, and using other people's money was a really big, growth part. I think it's we're not taught a lot in a way. Well, I guess nobody teaches anything, but actually the structure and setting up of a business. We've got a two-way split in our co-ownership of Edify, with Bianca and Adrian owning their part together, and myself owning my part of the business. And I think just navigating through finding the right co-founders with the same value, same idea, same goals and timeline. Um, I think would be really difficult. And I certainly, when we were going through our accelerator program, the Luminar X, a plug for the
Bit of a
cohort
plug,
team,
yes.
it was such a great experience. But what we really was quite obvious was our team was to be envied a little bit, because we had each other to bounce stuff around, or just to tag in and out when one person couldn't be available for things. So being a solo, I think, founder is a really lonely, I think, journey. And I guess,
Definitely.
yeah, if you can find the right crew
Mhm.
um, to go on this journey with, it really is worth so much in your mental, physical, and financial health, really.
I think one of the key things you mentioned there was making sure they've got the same timelines as you. So same values, same, yeah, they're on the same journey as you and they want to be a part of the process. But I've found in some businesses and startups where had different timelines where one co-founder had maybe a 6 month runway, and they just couldn't sustain it financially. And then another one had a 3 year runway, and as soon as 6 months came up, it got a little bit taxing on the business. And then that business effectively just broke up because the timelines were different. Same principles, same values, same driving force, but they didn't get clear on all their expectations. So definitely one
Um,
big takeaway.
yeah, look, I'm gonna lie to you. That's definitely something that we've had to learn as well. And I think the most important thing is to continue to have a conversation with each other from a place of respect and understanding, and going back to why we all started the journey in the first place, and be really solution focused about what's next. um, Talking about the dirty laundry and trying to find a good solution to it is, I guess my thing is it is a marriage, and you're all going to fight, and you're going to have bad days where you're all grumpy with each other and people aren't meeting expectations, and you can't just break up just with the first hurdle.
And there's going to
So
be plenty of those hurdles across the journey,
yeah.
and tough conversations because it's where when we put people in a little bit of a pressure cooker, and that's what a startup can be. There can be a bit of pressure on our team and everybody that's involved, and it can be a little bit personal too because it's like your concepts, your ideas, and you're sort of battling your own thought processes, and you're learning because it's new, it's different, and throwing everyone in that little pressure cooker can have its own moments. And been there, done that with our founders and co-founders, no longer founders, with the business in the past. And yeah, you learn a lot from those experiences.
Yeah, and I think I guess having the bravery to make hard decisions, whatever those hard decisions are, is really important. But I'm a really big believer in respecting. I would expect to be respected, and I would respect other people. And I think if you can always keep that at the table, at the discussion table, things are more likely to get resolved than the blame game
And one of the
there.
one of the things that I've found that's worked with groups that we've seen that have worked is generally the co-founders have different skill sets and different views of the world. Um, Now, you might find that that would be a little bit challenging because you're working with completely different people. But if you can learn to understand the benefits of each other and the value that you bring, that I've found is the best makeup in terms of a little group, because you will have your sort of battles against each other. But as soon as you can really understand and comprehend how each other works, thinks about everything, how they operate, it's going to put you in good stead. So I found that people that are the same thinking co-founders generally just say yes to each other and keep moving. There's no one challenging the thinking, and that's another issue that you can run into.
Yeah, look, I feel like we actually have the dream team, Andrew.
It's
So the three
good. Yeah,
in
yeah.
that sense of
Uh-huh.
I am team calls me the hustler. I'm the
Yes.
front end. We have Bianca, who's like the super nerd. She's clinical. She's process driven. She's really methodical. She loves sitting down doing ISO. I'm like, oh.
Exciting stuff, isn't it? For you, it would be not at all. Yes.
Yes. And then we have Adrian, who is, really he's kind of our tech designer background, very systematic in the way he approaches. And between all of us, actually, we all bring 20 plus years experience to the table as a team. So we kind of like an old startup. That's how I
All
describe
startup,
us.
but yeah, I think a 20-year-old
Very,
startup compared to someone that has experience, like you have to when you're moving from corporate, you have to unlearn some of the things that you learned in corporate world to move into startup. But it's a hell of a lot easier than that 20-year-old that has no real world experience or anything trying to jump in. Yeah, so you just got to unwind, throw some things out that you've learned in the corporate world. Because, like you said, you might have had big budgets, things you could throw out, test, gauge, but now you got to really be smart and poignant as to which way you approach it. So it's about a bit slower movement sometimes in a startup to make a decision, because once you stick with it, that's the investment that you're going to make. So, but you need to be able to move and test and gauge. There's plenty to learn.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do I think we've done ours totally on the cheap? Probably not
Mm-hmm.
totally on the cheap, um, because we did actually get some early investment in from outside investors. But I think what we have done with our development of our product is we never actually did any development until we went through the accelerator program, until we mapped out. We just felt like we took a lot of early learnings, pitfalls, mistakes that people have kind of navigated and fallen into. And that's when we really started to spend the money that, once we actually had a bit more of an understanding of let's do it and do it in stages. So
Got it.
I can't get enough getting involved with the right accelerator
Mm-hmm.
as far as listening to the learnings, like
Mm-hmm.
you just said,
Yes.
of um, of those that have actually been in the trenches
Mm-hmm.
themselves and that they can advise you. I think going in with totally open mind for a learning experience, and leaving kind of prejudice or previous ideas kind of at the door, not disvaluing it, discounting it, but being really open to actually how does that fit in with what I believe is true is really, really important.
Yeah, and I think going in as open-minded and coachable is important because it's a new experience for yourself, your team members that are coming out of corporate, and that you need to be open-minded to other people's experiences because that's one of the reasons why we do the podcast, sharing people's experiences. And if anyone's willing to listen, that's a good start. Because if we sort of just think we're on our own journey and we can make our own decisions, there's so much time we can save by learning from others. So I think, yeah, being a part of good accelerators, good mentors, and being willing to listen. But yes, like you said, you need to make your own calls. It's your business at the end of the day. So you need to make your own judgments, make your own decisions off the back of past knowledge and what you're learning through the process.
Yeah. I think for me, the one thing that has been really different that I just didn't quite understand, and I'm much clearer now a year into this, is, the pathway to capital
Mm-hmm.
is is such an important conversation for any business, whether it be startup or established business. I think that as a startup community, we can really do better to educate business, of the different types of options that are available, the different pathways. I think it's there's a tendency to take down, the angels or the VC route has a much louder gong in the kind of that startup world than other opportunities and other ways of getting capital. So I think if in the startup community, if that is something that can um, be shared with a bit more honesty of, well, if you do choose to go down certain paths, these are the types of outcomes that you're looking at. Because you do get on a bit of a train and you're excited and you're high and you are wanting to do everything that everyone's kind of trying to tell you, but it's not necessarily the way to go and approach. It might not be suitable for your business and what you want from it.
So what approach did you take? Obviously, you've got something that you've learned through that experience. So what approach did you take from a funding perspective? I know you have mentioned you've had a funding route. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so we had an initial funding round where it was kind of high net worth individuals that had invested for a equity share in the company. Um, Not a huge percentage of equity here, but 15% equity share in the company. Happy to share it. So we had a $500,000 investment, 15%. But they were my kind of net worth, high net worth connections who knew me, knew my work, believed in the vision of what we had for the company. Um, and it was based, the amount, I guess, was based on what we needed to deliver a product to a good MVP level to really take it to the next kind of milestone.
Got it.
It was a big amount for a very specific task.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we have kind of explored other options. we're not suitable for some. They don't want to see us either. But I think because I have been involved with it, and I think I'm sure you'll touch into this a little bit, other networks, the SheEO network, and now the She Backs Me kind of group, I have a little bit better understanding what other capital potential investments that there are out there that are not tied to your giving up capital. There are some other ways of trying to get money, which I think you do feel a little bit rushed all the time as a startup to raise. There's just this kind of sense of
looking for urgent. Yeah, there's urgency. We need capital to do things to keep moving, and everyone sort of gets pulled into that.
Yeah, they really do, and I get really swept up and caught up, and you very emotional and emotive, and you feel like that's just what you should do, but and so it's taken a little bit of time to kind of unwind from that type of requirements. And I think a lot of stuff is very much led by a lot of other international ideas, which don't actually necessarily meet the Australian taxation requirements, which are that like the details of how money comes in and how money gets accounted for sounds really great at a high level, but at a micro level and a practical level, they don't actually necessarily work for Australian taxation system. So I think my advice to any startup is to assess every aspect of that really carefully. Your accountant really has to be your best friend in this process. Because they are the ones that are like super boring and will tell you whether or not you can actually do that and what impact, if you do that, will come to you.
Because there are challenges in terms of to release equity to somebody, and once it's got a value, and then all of a sudden there's a tax implication. There's a number of different things that need to be considered. There's plenty of options. There's R&D tax concessions, but you need a bit of money to spend up front. There's debt facilities, there's loans, there's financing you can do, especially if you're in the world of subscriptions, starting to generate some revenue if you don't want to go back and go down that route. So there's plenty of options. But yeah, I think people need to, like you said, probably just dig in and just have a bit more of a conversation around what the options are and how they might do that. There are groups that may look at equity deals, especially early on, and do reduce payments, etc. And there's different options, but it's all depends on what level the company's at. Because once you start raising $500,000 at a 15% valuation, there's a value on this business now. So that changes what, like you said, the tax implications of any equity release, etc. for the people that are receiving it. So there's a few things to think about there.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I think it's and again, even just the equity between the initial equity split.
Yes.
I think I guess what would I say if I was to do it again? I think there would be very little rush in kind of splitting anything at the front end and having, different, looking at all of the different ways of which that could be actually done. But, and that's why lots of people have like 3 or 4 stuff.
Correct. Plenty of people who go through that journey, one after the other, and getting it right. I think I agree with that. I think the equity splits at the beginning, before anything's done, is a little bit challenging, and I think it all sounds rosy at the beginning, where you bring a team of 3 people together and the expectations are sort of set, but then one person's doing it all, and if someone decides to exit, do you have a plan to get them out, and what happens to the equity? So you've got to think about all this sort of stuff. And unfortunately, at the time of startup, we're in a mode of excitement. We're moving. We're looking to be on the same journey, but we don't think about what if things change. And yeah, that's something that not many do. Reality is probably 10% of them do it.
I mean, we've said it offline.
Yeah.
It's just that you get married and you like don't think.
Yes. Correct. It's the same in business. Exactly.
So, it's the same thing. Like, whoa, what a messy exit that was.
Yep, got it. Well, yeah, that's the reality. We're just happy to get in and start. And no one's thinking about exit. I reckon, 5-10% of people tell me about exit. No one does. They're thinking about how they exit and sell this business. Everyone thinks about what sort of dollars they want when they want to exit, but yeah, no one's thinking about what happens if a partner wants to exit, or you need to get an investor out. What is the process? Yeah, no one really thinks that through, so that's something that you flag. Um, yeah, I don't think anyone talks about it. Yeah,
That awkward prenup.
it is. Get it? It's exactly what it is. So in terms of yeah, you mentioned a little bit on CEO. You're a bit involved in that group. Tell us a little bit about that. It is International Women's Day as we're recording this today, so it's probably fitting to have you on the podcast and talking
Yeah,
a little
thanks.
about CEO and what the importance of that within the community, and She Backs Me and all these things that you're involved in from an investor's perspective. Yeah, I'd love to hear about that world from you.
Yeah, I'd love to share this with you. So SheO started in Canada 7 years ago. Vicky Saunders, a real visionarian, I think, in the way she viewed how women were really, not getting access to funding comparable to their male counterparts when it came to venture capital or any kind of investment, and all of the challenges that came with that, whether it be um, the business ideas just didn't resonate with the wall of men who were, looking at the business ideas and didn't really understand why that business would be exciting, period undies or something.
Yeah, they wouldn't get it. And I think there's a lot of challenges in that world. It's, yes, you've got men running venture capital groups. That's the majority of making decisions on things like that. And they really have no place and understanding and concepts and some of those things. But yeah, there's quite a
Yeah,
bit to that.
and women do think different, and we do
Mm.
different. And so CEO really kind of came from that philosophy.
Mhm.
And what he has created is a collective group of women who are underpinned by one philosophy, which is radical generosity. We all believe and believe in the ethos of radical generosity, where we pay it forward to our female peers if we can. And what that looks like is we actually donate $1,100 every year. It's not tax deductible. It's just you activate and become part of this community, and then that money actually gets pooled, um, collective, and it is then used to fund five businesses. So here in Australia, we had a funding pool of $500,000 that was decided earlier this year. Five businesses, women-led, women-owned businesses, and the terms for that is interest-free for 5 years. So
And that's an example of a different type of funding route. And yeah, no, it's quite a. When you told me about this, I didn't know the detail, and I thought it's quite fascinating. And I think it's a great initiative in terms of adding value to people that are trying to make a difference, and having all females involved in this process is, yeah, hats off to that concept getting through and actually growing in Australia as well. I think it's
So, in Canada, the idea is to eventually create a perpetual fund that grows and grows and grows, because we've had almost 100% payback. So that's almost unheard of in the world of financial repayment, where
so
the business
yeah.
in line have, I think there's literally one in all of the time that has not paid that
Been
money back.
wow. And what do
Uh,
you think is the reason for that? Is it the way it's vetted? What is the reason you think that that actually happens?
I think it's the again the ethos you apply for. It's literally five questions. Tell us about what it is that you're doing, and why is it going to make a difference to the world? you know,
Yeah.
how will this affect the people? And like, there's all these questions that you just wouldn't really get that would be important.
Got it.
Um, and then the finalists, you get semi-finalists that are put in, and then actually all the activators review the businesses and they vote,
Mhm.
and then they go to the finals, and then all of the activators actually then review and then select the final five. But in that process of going to the finals, the finances are all reviewed. There is a minimum. You have to bring in at least $50,000 a year in revenue, so it's not like an early startup, no revenue, but it's 50,000 a year And so all of the finances are checked, that everything's legitimate, the structure and the business is good, and they go into the final. The activators then all vote for the final five. And then the final five then go away for a weekend together.
Yeah,
And
this was fascinating. You described this.
they talk about how they should split this money amongst themselves.
Classic. Yeah.
And one person can't have it all. One can have none.
Yes.
And then you can't have an equal split.
You can't have any because it's brilliant. So this is all our war, or how does it go generally?
It is a community. It is a pay it forward, a mentor. You help each other. It's a connection. It's a network. It's just, again, lots and lots of like-minded people helping to support other like-minded individuals, and actually then bringing younger people into that fold, who are starting their journey as well, in a safe space where nobody's trying to take anything from them. Everyone's just there to really give kind of their assistance. It is really, I think, and I put it out there to any of your listeners who are, men and women. It's not just, but who really believe in this kind of a new way of supporting, funding businesses for people to be successful. To really look into SheEO, and if you have some spare cash that you want to pay it forward, then businesses make more income, make more jobs.
It's a win
All of
for
those.
everybody. And I find it, fascinating that everyone's been able to pay it back. But how many activators would there be? 500, give or take. Is that where we're at?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think it's about the year in total in Australia.
Yes.
There is 500 activators
Mm-hmm.
here. It's growing. I think COVID's been challenging because we haven't been able to have the in-person event. I had a phone call today actually, just talking about where we'd like to see what would be of interest and important to us going forth. So I think just getting that message out there to really increase that, because what that allows is, and what I do know has happened, is that the governments do get introduced to this concept. I think our government spends a lot of money supporting lots of kind of female mentorship or this program and that program. But at the end of the day, women need money to start their businesses.
Everybody needs money or some form of capital. That's, yes.
We don't,
Yes.
don't need another accelerator.
Mm-hmm.
We need cash to deliver the products and services that we actually need to do in order to get our businesses going. So, that's actually had some really great engagement from government. But it is so different. It is a really different way of looking at money.
Unique, definitely. Very unique, yes. And I think the fact that it works it says a lot. I think there's a little bit in it. There's a bit of a group review, and I think that's important because sometimes a review of 2 to 3 people looking at one thing can leave a lot of challenges. But if you've got 400 or 500 people voting on something based on their past experience, maybe that herd mentality or thinking actually helps the process. Find that fascinating that it's all working.
But Andrew, women actually repay their loans.
Yes.
Like when you look at the, just statistics in general, women-led businesses have much better stats, success, and revenue. So it really is, I feel like, a no-brainer that we divert some of the money into these people who have really good stats.
Does make a lot of sense, doesn't it? And in terms of being an activator, can you be a male activator, or is it just a closed to You can be. Yeah. It's definitely something, I'll share a lot about, especially given what day it is today. We'll share this out and just get this message out as a part of the podcast predominantly.
Radical generosity.
Yes.
What is, the absolute core war cry for us.
Oh, brilliant. I think it's a great great initiative, and I think that's it's pretty good to see that it's happening in that way, and it's quite unique. I've heard of no other group that does that. I think it's very unique. You said zero interest money too, so I think that's yeah, it's all about just backing some people that probably you have a bit of faith in and you feel like they're going to make a difference. And obviously, when you're voting, you're going to appreciate those 5 questions and you're going to agree with the ones the most that you vote for. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you tap into the
Mm-hmm.
amazing
Yes.
work knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are so many talented
Yes.
people out there who don't even realize how talented they are.
Mm.
And when you have that group, you can just go, I really need some help. Someone can bounce. So I was helping somebody from Canada, some sales stuff. Like you that knowledge of people who are really willing to share those knowledges with you. It is really unique. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very, very good. So tell me a little bit back to your experience. Now, one of the things that you sort of tapped in was picking team, and I think picking a team is very important, especially our co-founders. What approach did you take when selecting team? Is it people you work with? Did you meet them in accelerator groups? How did you go through that selecting of who you work with and who's going to be a part of the co-founder journey
Yeah.
with you?
So my experience was and it's funny you mentioned before, people with the same similar personality, just you kind of. So there was always one person I always wanted to start a business with, but we'd just tried and it never just went anywhere. It was really weird, like
Yeah,
really both amazing sets of skills, and I just wonder whether it was because we had the same set of skills. So
interesting.
that's why I kind of stopped trying to push that boat. I rang Bianca when I heard that she got her redundancy a few months later after I did.
Okay.
And
Yeah. So did you work
they
together in the past? Same company?
at Medtronic.
Yes.
Actually, I Bianca into the business
Okay.
many ago, and then kind of mentored her into taking my role as I moved through the company. So I already knew, her skill sets, who she was as an individual, and because I was wanting to do something around the education space, uh, it made a lot of sense that those were the skills that she also had, and I really liked her as a person. And then the fact that she had a redundancy, I was like, well, you've got nothing to do, haven't you? So I rang her 9 o'clock. She's sitting having her first not working cup of coffee.
Yes. She's already getting phone calls or something to do. Brilliant.
Hey, what are you doing? You want to do? So that was kind of our initial conversation. And she's like, all right, we'll come and have a chat. So our chat was like a 7-hour brainstorm chat from let's just have some GP meetings and get a specialist to come in and talk, which is like basic bread and butter stuff for us. Well, that kind of sucks because people can't come because of COVID. Well, let's stream it. Okay, well, yeah, we should stream it. Okay, well, no, we should just record it for afterwards. And then it was like, well, do we even need to have a meeting if we're recording? And it kind of just, and this is so unfair that it's just in English wrong with us because I was talking to her about my experience in Asia. So I'm bilingual Thai. And because I trained the team from India all through Asia, right through to Japan, and I worked with all of the doctors in all of those countries, I just saw firsthand that we just pushed everything out in English. And not
Mm.
only did the struggle with not just the language, but even accent.
Yeah, I
The
can
team,
imagine the challenge with just the accents and whoever's communicating that, especially when it's a second language.
they're like, can you translate Australians for us? We can't even.
It would be very challenging. Yeah, it wouldn't be easy for them. So got that.
Yeah, so and even team two. So when we were training APAC team to go into their country to be clinical experts in their areas so that they can go and teach doctors and nurses, because I was Thai, I saw the disconnect in one learning in English and then correctly understanding the information and then correctly reinterpreting that information into local language and teaching the next person. Because I saw that happening in the Thai. There was, by the time you got to the relaying of the information back in the local language, there was probably 25% left of the information.
Yeah, so you saw the problem through your
But
past experience. Mm.
for us burning out product managers, marketing managers in country who were doing all the translations themselves, they had to, the burden of that work, of that accurate technical translation I saw directly. We just and then the loss of quality would go if
Mm.
the staff left. We're back
Yeah.
to square one again.
Start again.
We start again. So there was just no consistency, reliability.
Mhm.
And so I guess having seen that, that was a really strong focus for me. It was like, if we are doing this, we need to actually make this available in other languages, because when we don't give it in languages that's other than English, the people, we just assume everyone speaks English, but they just don't. So um, when you look at the world and look at what languages is a first language in all of the world, um, only 5% of the world has English as a first language.
Yeah, so they may speak English, but not first language means there's always challenges with translation, comprehension. Yeah, there are difficulties. It's not a first language. Yeah.
And and so when you have, if we talk about the doctors themselves, you know, the people who go to meetings to learn, they have the means to go and do that, the time and the language ability. Then they come back home and they have to disseminate those information accurately, in a timely manner. And you know what? That's a lot of Chinese whispers and a lot of privileges to access that information. So I guess that's where Edify really came from. We just wanted to break down all those privilege points, language privilege points,
Got it.
access points,
Hmm.
and cost and privilege points, so that the junior doctor in Calcutta has actually heard that training exactly from that expert, the same as his superior.
And how do you go
Um,
about doing that? Because obviously, you need someone really versed in both languages to translate, but also probably with a medical background, I would imagine, to be able to make sure that everything is as it should be. So how do you approach that piece?
uh, yeah, so we a little bit naively at the beginning.
As we all do as you walk into the world of startup, but yes.
We just made this assumption
Uh,
that, um, if you use companies, that you could actually get some quality.
okay.
Found through our own personal experience and cash outlay is that many of
Yes.
these organizations use machine learning.
Mm.
Um, and because we did all of the tests in Thailand, Thai first, and I can read Thai,
Yes.
I can quality of the work.
That's probably a good place to start where you can actually verify because otherwise it's very hard. Yeah.
As my speaker
Yeah.
is clearly a man, and
Yeah.
every single text is referring to a woman as a speaker. I was like, oh dear.
Good. Okay.
So we didn't mean to actually become a translation specific company, but we've actually
Mm.
had to be, and
Okay.
built the resources and manpower to deliver on the accuracy, and specialist knowledge that's required to do this. So we actually have literally called to arms, the medical community to be part of this journey. What's been a really interesting and exciting thing that we've learned in the process is how much they value that. People are learning
Yeah,
themselves.
that's a positive, isn't it? Yeah.
It's orthopedic surgeons translating other orthopedic surgeons.
Mm.
They feel like they're learning from people that they wouldn't get that information
Mhm.
directly from. And then they're paying that forward to their peers
Mm.
who now access that information.
Mhm.
So there's a great pride in that work. So that's been a really interesting kind of discovery for us. So that leads to kind of the overall secret grand plan of Edify Medical is that in all of the translation work we're doing, we're collecting all of that accurate data as well as the inaccurate data as benchline. And we're going to be working to power medical AI translation, for the future.
That's a big
Uh,
vision. Got it. Yeah,
it,
because obviously people doing it needs to be done now, but long term, can you get to that point? And I think it's all about how much data you have effectively.
exactly, and that's no one's got the data, so
No,
we
that
are
data doesn't exist. Mm.
collecting and building that data
Mhm.
base to. So we have a purpose with the process. That's not just what people do. It most translations done now is just done and that's it. That's on one sheet of paper, and that's a complete waste of time, resources, it's in one moment, whereas we're hoping to actually make that continue to live and breathe its own self and come back to benefit everyone else in the future.
Oh, brilliant. Now you're a translation company, effectively, backed by some technology that actually distributes the content. How did you go about finding your technology co-founder? Because we haven't talked. It was Adrian, I believe his name was.
Yeah, so
Yes.
Adrian and Bianca are partners. I didn't really
Hmm.
understand. I didn't know really what his skill sets were other than kind of graphics design. It was Bianca that said, "Oh God, Adrian's the man for this," the other side, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So we
Yeah.
then put a bit of a sell sheet to him about,
Yes.
what do you say? You want to get on board? Um, and so yeah, that's so we kind of accidentally fell onto one because there was like a little, uh, relationship already going
Got
on
it.
in the back.
Yeah, no, got it. So that obviously keeping it close, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just as long as we can make it work. That's all.
I'm not saying that that's for everybody to go and work out how to find
Yes.
a technical founder that way. I
It's, it's quite a unique way of doing it, but yeah, it's done. So so he's
um,
taking control, obviously, how the tech stack's
yeah,
managing
so he's
technology team.
staff, but he knows that because he's worked in the space. So he's brought on the tech team
Hmm.
to do that. One thing that we did actually agree on right at the beginning, again, based on the ethos of our company, was we all have kids, and we want our children to have jobs in the future, and paid what they're worth, and live in this beautiful country. So we were very adamant that our spend stayed in the country. Especially with this really expensive tech built, because we looked around, we just couldn't see anything
Yes.
that served.
Mm.
We had to build. But our was like, understand it's going to cost us more, but we have a vision that we have to live our ethos of supporting Australians.
No, I think that's a really good initiative. But one thing I'd question is it really costing more? Because I've seen people go offshore, spend big money, and not get anything delivered to any quality or spec. So it's sometimes you need to balance that out. It's all right. How close can we be with the technology team? Ensure they're a part of the vision. Ensure they understand what we're about as a business, because that buy-in is more important than saving a few dollars here and there and then hoping you
Oh,
get back what you want or what you expected or what
that
you imagined. So there's a bit in that.
yeah, you're absolutely bang on. I think that we've spent no. Do I think the value and the engagement and the enthusiasm and the passion, we're, they're not just people behind computers. They actually really live and breathe the philosophy of the company. We want them to be part of the future of the businesses. And because we've built a platform, now we actually have not just Edify Medical, we have a platform as well that has all of the power to deliver this service to other needs out there, and I feel like we've saved time and an absolute fortune, um, kind of in even I won't even say long run, in the short run, because we haven't actually gone overseas.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's fascinating that whole overseas, onshore, offshore sort of mix and how people go about it. Um, Generally, I find that the offshore experiences can work if you've got someone there or you've got someone really close that can actually understand the technology, what's coming back. There is a translation problem too that you've got to be conscious of because culturally, offshore is very different to how, if you're in Australia, very different to how we operate and how we think. So there's differences in translation of if there's a problem, some cultural backgrounds will not raise their flag and say, I have a problem, I don't understand something. They'll spend weeks trying to figure it out on their own accord. So there are these challenges that you need to be abreast of if you go down that path. Not saying anything against offshore, onshore. I think you can deliver from all fronts, but yeah, if you are in the position to stay mostly onshore, it's generally a lot smoother. But yeah, it's still having that technical co-founder will then give you a lot more uplift and be able to deliver this thing because they can keep
And
their eye on it.
worth paying for one.
Hmm.
That's
Yes.
one manager that you would put on a building site.
Yes.
That's I would spend money on. Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you don't, you're sort of in a position where you're managing a project which you may have had project managing experience, but you've never managed tech. You don't understand the challenges in tech. You don't understand how quickly things should move, shouldn't move. It is complicated. So technology is a complicated little beast. So yeah, getting somebody to help is definitely a given, especially non-technical.
I do have one piece of advice that I think I've learned recently, and
Yes.
it's because of a great tech co-founder that has avoided this problem. And I've seen this over and over again with colleagues who've gone through the program with us and kind of on a lot of the channels that I'm part of. People talk about when you break up with your tech team about IP, who owns it, and all of those really challenging kind of breakup relationship and accountability. One thing that we have done, and I'm so grateful for, is that all of our tech has been all built on our accounts. Um, so the developers have access to do all of their work on our accounts. So Edify owns every bit of technology on every level, from the video through, and that's something that's not often, people don't realize that. They just say, I would like this built, and off the guys go and they're doing their stuff. But it's actually sitting on their accounts because it's probably easier because they've got all their stuff on their place. And but when recently a very good friend has had to break up, she can't access any of that stuff.
Yeah,
Like
that's scary. I've heard people that have lost hundreds of $1,000s to teams that they can't get this code back, and yeah,
advice that we didn't learn accelerated. If I could,
yes.
if I one message I can impart here today, all development, those should be your account. You own it, and they build it in there.
Yeah, and I think it's good advice. Like even your hosting providers, if you're using AWS, yeah, your Azures of the world, own the keys to that. Yeah, we do that for our clients. We run a tech business, our own products and bits and pieces. But if we're developing something, yes, we give them the keys because you want to be transparent. And IP is important to understand. There's a lot of IP challenges if you don't really understand the detail. As a coder, if I'm writing something, I effectively own the IP unless I sign it over to you. So it's important to understand that. And what does that mean? I'm writing the book effectively, so the knowledge is coming out of my head creating the code. Some people get stuck in positions where they may own the final product, but they don't own the underlying code base, which means the whole value of their business is really shot in the foot because they just got their outstanding product. If they want to build on it, they can't, and I've seen people had to start again. So there are a lot of grey
Lots
areas in
of
that space.
an understanding there. That's
Mhm.
that's if anywhere that I've
Yeah.
seen where it
Mhm.
gets way too much is definitely there.
Yeah.
And we again feel really grateful
Mhm.
that we had an experienced person
Mhm.
helping navigate the business through those really just completely unobvious to me challenges.
If you're
Yeah.
not aware of it, it's like anything. What you don't know, you don't know. That can be this space. So being non-technical, having someone you can rely on is important. Whether it be your tech team, your advisory team in the technology space, or that co-founder that comes in and helps guide that. But in the end, you need the right person in the team. So, and you wouldn't know that until you go through the journey either. So sometimes that's a little bit of a tricky one. But there's plenty in that. Yupin, this has been a pleasure having a conversation. I think we're getting close to an hour, so might start winding up and just. I think there's been a lot for people to think about in this conversation. How do we pick co-founders that we're working with? Um, Also, I think the CEO activation program. I think everybody should be a part of that. That's in business. I think that's and I'll put my hand up and we'll go do that from our business. I think that's a positive thing to actually give back to some credible people that have been that are looking to make a big difference in the world or in their own little dynamic and area. So I think that's a really good initiative.
Next year directly. I won't
Yes.
lose that.
No, definitely. Send me everything you need to do. I'll go through that process. So I think it's an amazing little initiative, and I quite that. That's and on International Women's Day, I think it's a really good thing that we can share and talk about. So thank you, Yupin.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for having me on
Yes.
the show. let everyone know a little bit about Edify Medical.
Yeah,
Thank
in terms of anyone wants to learn more about Edify Medical, how might they reach out and what's the best place to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can find us both on the websites at edifymedical.com.au. We're on LinkedIn as well. Find us through there. Love you to just jump on and actually download the app, Edify Med, on the App Store or Google Play. Give us some feedback on it. That would be great. We're populating all the Thai onto that now, so it's all got all the in the English. So that would be really amazing if we can actually see and get some feedback on our product. But yeah, that's how you'll find us. And please come and say hello. And if you think that we can help you communicate your business in other languages, which is something that a lot of people don't think about, come to us. We're all in health and we're all in tech, and um, there's a big world out there who in a really big market who do stuff in other languages other than English.
Yeah, I know. I think when we're in an English-speaking country, it can be a little bit maybe daunting to think about that too. But yeah, if you've got the help that you need, and a group like yours definitely can assist. So Yupin, really appreciate you coming on DevReady Podcast, sharing your journey to date. Let's check in a year or so because I'd love to hear how it all progresses because I think there's big things in your pathway. So good luck with everything and look forward to speaking soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yupin.
See you. Bye.